Hello, I'm Jack, and I'm an alcoholic addict.
Hey, Jack.
I'm especially grateful to attend and share at this meeting with you all, with everyone here with the same goal of staying sober. I'm in the house of my higher power when I'm in this hall, as I'm learning early on in this stage of long-term sobriety. The God of my understanding makes me feel at home in their house, but still I am a guest. God integrates me into the community and allows me to be both dutiful and comforted by the integrity, authenticity, and genuine care here. I'll start by saying this. No one told me I was an alcoholic. I had to find that out for myself 7 years after my first rock bottom. That first wave of failures in young adult life was a morbid fall from grace. Regardless of the alcohol and the weed use and whatever the hell party life was, I faced some repressed memories of childhood abuse that shattered the image I saw in the mirrors I looked into as a 20-year-old young adult. That sent me into escape reality mode and blaze a trail on the way to the dispensary or a party with booze mode. And the thought of being a thriving young adult with an associate's degree and opportunities to make something of myself before a certain age in life got pushed out of the way so I could get my hands on the newest and most potent eighths of weed and my personal record of beer cans in one go at any place, at any time. I was poisoning my body and my mind daily for years, chasing the thrill of party life for me and my college baseball buddies. The first rock bottom appeared to be a small backslide in life. Leading up to it, I worked the summer of 2018 in a warehouse in Kent, saving for my sophomore year of school and baseball, so I could roommate with my teammates in an apartment. I made a living for 3 months with only one major alcohol binge and came back to school in an environment that fall season that glorified drugs and alcohol while pretending to be serious about school and sports where someone could really make something of themselves in life. It turned out to be a complete wasted opportunity. I was a horrible roommate despite my good intentions and ability to cover my share of the rent. I ended up quitting the baseball team with irrational thinking like an alcoholic, cashed in on my school credits for the associate's degree and went to full-time stoning and boozing. This first rock bottom turned into an accepted defeat that to me was as simple as I get to come back home and go back to the drawing board. I was unconsciously blind to how I failed everyone supporting me in life by squandering what my previous substantial efforts set me up for. That's when I could have turned things around by my own power and responsibility and self-accountability. I could have sat with my emotions, learned, reflected, and grew, and took fault like a responsible adult instead of pointing fingers at everyone else. I could have moved on with more information than before with priorities in order, like sobriety. But like most people with the predisposition to escape difficult emotions and feelings, I went back to escape reality mode, blaze a trail to the dispensary, and a party with booze mode. Not learning anything, not listening to anyone with my best interest in mind, a heartbreaking thing that's all too common for people that age. Less than a year later was my second rock bottom. I'm still 20, almost 21 years old, around 2020. I have a career going for me in the moving industry. I'm saving and covering expenses and moved back in with family. From the outside looking in, there appears to be motivation. Truthfully, though, this was just me setting foot on false ground, thinking I'm in control. A half-baked illusion. A hole in the ground covered up, waiting to be fallen through. Half-baked for multiple reasons, the main one being the absence of a true ambition and the desire to find myself in a grounded reality like we do as fellow AA members. My second rock bottom was job loss. I couldn't prioritize my wellness and maturity of adulthood over drinking every night and smoking every night with my then best friend who I'd met in high school. At the time, I had the highest paying job of my life, and I grinded hard for a couple weeks before I started waking up sick and hungover almost every day for a year, all while dealing with my diagnosis of adjustment disorder, which is a specific type of PTSD with disturbing thoughts and emotions. Adjustment disorder is a debilitating state of emotional and mental health that led me to needing heavy prescription pills by way of a psychiatrist. So this time around, I lost the most promising scenario in my life, not even caring about it or thinking much of it. When I say empty, I mean I was empty. I was almost convinced that I didn't care about anything, when actually deep down I truly cared enough to bleed for whatever the best thing was for me and my family. Still, even then, back then, nothing motivated me more than having some pocket cash for a value pack of beer and some weed with my drinking buddy. not even a high-paying job or a secure, bright future. The theme here is how the bodily and mental illness of alcoholism pushes you along a path of seeking excuses, delusions, and comfort and putting blinders on, ignoring the damage you're inflicting. Typically, respect for yourself and others gets lost in the brain fog and the pursuing of the next buzz. If that's not a problem, I don't know what is. No one would want that dreadful loop for anyone. Personally, I wouldn't wish that on anyone. I was still far out from knowing there is a solution. I was still far from admitting powerlessness over alcohol. And if you had asked me to define humility, I may have been able to point to Jesus Christ and say that Christ is humble. He healed the sick and saved us despite our sin and abuse. It was something I always wanted to be, humble, but I hadn't brought it in close and started to emulate it yet. And by then, Alcoholics Anonymous was only something for middle-aged dads with families that wanted them to stop drinking. And that was the stigma I had filed it under. As we know in here, I was completely wrong. AA is a godsend for anyone who wants to stop drinking or wants to be a humble person striving for a good life for themselves and others. And now for my third and fourth and fifth and sixth and seventh rock bottoms, they're all still a blur to me. So please forgive me for not being extremely clear of how it all went down, but I was learning lessons the hard way and not the smart way. During the COVID year and the following 3 years, I was basically smoking and drinking 24/7 in between screwing up perfectly good employments and being the toxic, depressed son and brother that checked out of life and was destined for 40 years old in the basement, smoking weed and chugging beers. But then, and I give this one to the God of my understanding and his design for people's lives, his plan for their life, and design of biophysiology. If it weren't for my reverse tolerance and my incapability to keep up the pace with boozing and stoning harder and more, I really wouldn't have been inclined to reevaluate the habits, the disease. I finally noticed that each drink or smoke led to worse conditions than the last. I was insane. I was a shell of a person at 21 and 22 years old. Even though I stuck to self-improvement work and was in therapy for 6 or 7 years at that point, and I was even diligent enough to write out my principles, I excluded myself from community. Without community, being of service and receiving guidance from someone who completed all the steps, all that self-improvement BS goes out the window when push comes to shove, especially when you're spiking the graph of anxiety and depression, ups and downs, and poisoning yourself, basically. What was destroying my life? Was it the mental health concerns? Was it alcohol and weed? Obviously both, but why was I in shambles and in conflict with everyone I know and meet? Excuse me. Why did I isolate so much and fear social interaction? How would I ever get the answers and move forward with anything, let alone something important? There is a solution. Before I arrived in Pasadena in June of 2025, I survived 5 overdose suicide attempts over 2 years while acting on an empty, destroyed, fractured self-esteem. I wasn't even cognizant enough to ensure my own death most of the time, for most of those attempts. The intensive outpatient group therapy wasn't enough for me. I hadn't admitted to myself powerless and built a foundation yet on which I was willing to sacrifice self. If I think I'm in control, I'm stepping in God's way and telling God one single broken person, me, can do what you can do without you. You don't need to work your divine will over mine, as opposed to thy will be done. It wasn't until my 4th or 5th overdose when I returned home from the mental health hospital and said to myself, I have to get a life coach or a sponsor or someone, anything, because if I keep this up, I was going to die miserable. Up until recently, I was under the impression that I would need an 8-year double major degree to be able to prevent these problems from swallowing lives whole, including mine. There's people in confusion and chaos without answers that need a complete version of me and you to lend a hand. It turns out there's a place nearby that will set you up and keep you on track to be who you truly, deeply desire to be for you and for the newcomer who gets spit up out of a pit of hell in need of answers. It's called an AA meeting hall, and attending meetings there, adhering to the Design for Life works. I'm currently 6.5 months sober, waking up from delusion one after the other, putting in valid efforts that are gratifying, and I can actually retain information now, and God is working me along the narrow path. I'm meeting people who care enough to see that you and I get better, and we have that in common. I've matured in the last 6 months more than I did in the past 6 years, and that's thanks to AA. Thank you for being in attendance, and thank you for your time.